Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, preparing to feed one of my worm bins. It's the bin that's got the mixed batch of worms in it. So by mixed worms, I mean there's red wigglers, European night crawlers, and Indian blue worms supposedly living in this container. And the system's now 307 days old. Last checked in on 13 days ago, so its 300th day in service sort of came and went without any fanfare. Last time we fed them, feeding number 25, we tried to gear up the feeding in such a way that it might help us drive forward our latest strategy for trying to control springtails, because there's been this sort of major outbreak of springtails down in this system. And I've tried numerous things at this point. I was trying diatomaceous earth, I was trying just drying of the system to see if that might reduce the springtail. So here I see a dried up worm, and I don't think it's a worm that came from this system per se. I did come down here the other day and I noticed a worm falling on the ground right next to this system, and it seemed like it had fallen from another bin from above, because this system actually sits on the floor nowadays. So I'm definitely curious to see how things are doing here. It would be kind of a nice change of pace if we were to come in here and see a minimum of springtails. I mean, like right here, I'm definitely seeing a small little patch of them, but normally we come in here and they're just everywhere. So it'd be kind of nice to think that maybe we'd sort of taken a step in the right direction with our latest strategy. And the latest strategy was trying to gear up their feeding to not promote fungal growth within the bin. So I guess one of the viewers contacted me watching one of my previous videos here. This looks like springtails trying to, I guess, cleanup crew type action, trying to do away with a dead worm. Here's the dead worm I picked off the top surface, so maybe they could do away with that too. So it's that sort of thing that I think the small little insects in a bin are best for. Sort of being cleanup crew and taking care of things like dead worms. That's what I think mites and springtails are best. Oh, brother. Best suited for in the worm bin. But you know, it's meant to be a worm bin. It's not meant to be a springtail bin. So, I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but like when I peeled back stuff here, all this stuff looks like springtails. So, I'm not even sure if we're ever going to achieve what we're trying to pull off here in terms of reducing their numbers. I just don't understand what it is about this system that seems to cause them to thrive. It's so weird. I don't know. I guess I did once again try to keep to the thinking that maybe we would not put worm chow in here, we would not put coffee in here, we would not put stuff like mushrooms or any sort of bread or grain-based products. Since those are the sort of things in the worm bin, they do generally tend to trigger the growth of mold. And if it is in fact fungal type, growth within the bin that these little springtails thrive on, then my hope is that by limiting those types of foods that promote fungal growth, maybe we can reduce the number of springtails in here. So I don't know. I mean, to see a whole bunch over there in the feeding area kind of makes sense. To see them hanging out on a dead worm, cleaning it up, seems to make sense too. But I guess I was most curious to see what we see when we actually peel some material back. And I guess like we've been seeing lately, it's the same old story, just more of them. Occasionally I do like to let the camera run a little bit like that and just try to get a somewhat different perspective on some of the slow moving stuff that happens in the worm bin. Usually I'm just doing that with the worms, but sometimes it's revealing to try to observe other things in the bin too, using that approach. Yeah, they're definitely still here in good numbers. I don't know, some people have commented suggesting that maybe the numbers have dropped a little bit. I don't know, it's hard for me to tell. So I figured maybe before we replenish the feeding end over on the other edge of the bin, we would do a quick little inspection of how the opposite end of the bin is doing. At no point have we fed this end of the bin ever since they've been living in this container. This population started out pretty minuscule in size, and then they were moved out of the smaller container that they'd been living in previously into here. And all the material that came over with them from their old home into here was placed onto this edge of the bin, and that whole edge of the bin on that side was set up anew. All new materials, and ever since then I've been running this as sort of a wedge pattern, like a continuous flow type arrangement. Always allowing the most worked, all the most, I guess, castings rich material to just keep piling up over on this far end, and always feeding on the opposite end. Look at this. I mean, what is it about the material over here that's causing these worms to jumble together like this? I mean, there's nothing there. I've not fed on that end of the bin in weeks and weeks and months. It's so strange. I don't know, maybe there's something in the middle of this, or I guess maybe there's always that possibility that worms tend to huddle together when they feel like they're in distress or something. Maybe there's something going on, but I mean, it's the only place I've seen it. But then again, we've not really gone searching through the entire bin yet, so let's make our way over into the edge of the bin where we have been feeding and give them today's food. And I think some of the stuff that was identified as being foods that would promote fungal growth were even fruits, but I do have a couple pieces of fruit for them today. A couple pieces of melon rind. My mom provided me with a fairly large quantity of melon, melon rind, and even some melon, which I ate yesterday, and I've since put the melon rind of that melon away too, so I've definitely got a surplus of melon rind, and I didn't want to go too overboard, but I did bring a couple pieces of that down here for them as well. I mean, when you think of melon rind, it seems like the sort of thing that's not going to stick around in the bin very long anyway. So yeah, we definitely have a good number of worms hanging out over on this edge of the bin where the feedings have been getting applied. So I'll just keep sort of nudging the more worked material over in this direction, perhaps taking larger clumps of stuff and breaking it up along the way. Anything that looks like a larger piece of kind of debris or basically leftover bits of bedding or food, I'll usually just grab that stuff and place it over where the food is going to get applied. And then theoretically, this end of the bin should just end up being mainly castings only. But for whatever reason, the worms definitely seem to gravitate over towards that end of the bin still. I wonder why. Perhaps if I were to left this stuff to dry over on this edge, then maybe it would become less populated with worms. And then maybe there'd even be an opportunity to start scooping some of these finished castings out of here. I don't know, I guess that's one of the strategies of running a continuous flow type system or a wedge type system, is that eventually over on this end you're left with almost, exclusively castings. And if you let it dry a little bit, the worms might even move out, and then you could simply scoop it out. In the case of this bin, though, I've been covering pretty consistently across the entire surface of the container So I imagine the moisture level over on this edge is pretty much equivalent to what's over near the feeding area or close to it. Perhaps not exactly the same. Perhaps what's in the actual feeding area is more damp just because of the foods that have been placed in there. And maybe that's also got something to do with the springtails wanting to hang out over there too. Yeah, definitely a good number of worms hanging out over here. You may have noticed one or two little tiny worms appearing out of nowhere in the bin, and that was just me flicking them. The ones that I found stuck to my glove. And here was another one that I just missed the bin and I kind of overshot it over there. I just figured I'd get him back into the mix of things here before I forget about him. So I think the time has come for us to excavate the far end of the bin where we've been adding all the newest food and plop in today's portion. Looks like we've still got some leftovers of the bedding that we used last time. Some of it even feels a little bit dry. I guess that's to be expected with the coverings not really doing much to keep the moisture in the system in. With only paper, it does provide for a little bit of drying. And I guess that was meant to be one of the strategies too of trying to possibly reduce springtails by reducing the moisture content in the system. But we kind of gave up on that, thinking that that newest approach of the trying to reduce the fungal growth in the system being like the latest strategy. We just figured we'd try to just get back to covering. And it's not even that thorough of a covering with just, you know, a piece of paper, actually 2 pieces of paper. Even over in the feeding zone with that feeding zone indicators, 3 layers of paper there. So I don't know, just sort of winging it at this point. It doesn't feel like the strategy is yielding the types of results I had hoped for, but maybe it's just too soon. I don't know. So many little itsy bitsy worms in here. I'm seeing that in a lot of my systems. It does seem like mating has picked up over the past month or two since the temperature's been warming up. I think the official start of summer is a day or two away. So we're already starting to see some pretty nice warm summer-like temperatures here and there where I live, which is in central New Jersey here in the United States. So now the foods that they're getting, a little bit of fruit. Last time I tried to avoid fruit, thinking that that might be one of the things that contributes to fungal growth, but I just have so much melon rind. I actually have a whole lot of watermelon rind, which I really got to get rid of. But I figured I'd just bring down some of this melon rind and do away with a little bit of it here while we're feeding this system. And I think that it's just going to become a staple food item in most of my feedings over the next at least week or so until it's all gone, because I've got so much of it. And the rest of the stuff is veggies, although I'm not even sure about tomatoes. I think some people might classify tomatoes as fruit. I don't know. I think the jury's still out on that. But the lettuce is for sure vegetable matter. So that's pretty certain. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of this pulverized eggshell here onto the feeding area. Yeah, that is a pretty generous amount. I just replenished my supply, so maybe that's why I'm feeling generous with this stuff. And then on top of the foods, I guess we can even provide a nice little thin coating of additional bedding materials. I think the other thing that we thought might be a contributing factor to fungal growth was leaves, and that was part of the reason I didn't use any leaves last time. But when I used my prepared shredded paper cardboard mix, it's damp and it does have leaves in it too. So here again, we're sort of deviating from what was established as being the most current game plan already. So I don't know, we'll see. I don't want to lose faith so quickly. Maybe it is something I should try to be more persistent with, and maybe it will yield some positive effects. So I don't know, I'm always open to any suggestions. If anyone knows of any reasons why this approach would not work, then let me know. And it's, not going to take me much to abandon a new approach in favor of something that might have some more promise. But yeah, if you've got something more promising in mind that you think might help reduce springtails, then by all means, feel free to share. Definitely interested in hearing what you got to say. All right, well, back on go the covers, and that's it for today's check-in. Perhaps this time I'll try to focus the coverings more to be this way, so that perhaps on this side there's less coverings and more drying, and then maybe we'll get to see how things look on that edge. Maybe there'll be fewer springtails. All right, everyone, I got a few things I got to take care of putting away and getting cleaned up. Not going to keep you around for that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.